one thing that I find interesting is that as you research empaths, a lot of them had childhoods which we would label if we were going to label them as more unsafe. They did not feel safe in the childhood. So, for instance, if there's an abusive environment, the child tends to become very skilled at nonverbal cues, right? Becomes very aware and observant of what other people are doing, because it's a safety factor. And so it's possible that one reason why some people develop into empaths is because they have they've had these challenging environments in which they're raised, in which they have to trigger more development of mirror neurons in order to survive that environment. And so that's one thing. Like in me, I 100% know that I developed into an empath because of that, because of trying to navigate the environment. You're always aware, how is that person feeling? Like, what triggers that person? When do I need to fall into the shadow and whatever? So you become very good at reading people. So that's just one
Do
connection
you
with.
think, Sina, and what you've read and researched on this, do you think that so there's a if some people, let's just say some people have more of these than others,
Mhm.
it's that I mean that's what the research shows. Some people have more mirror neurons than others.
Yes, and it's probably through adaptation. Yeah.
Okay. So that was my question. Is this genetic? You're born that way, or the fact that people that have more tend to come from a disadvantaged or a difficult background have more. It's an adaptation of your. This is what epigenetics. This is where you actually adapt.
So I think it's both. I think you can be, so you're born and your nervous system is still in development, particularly for the first couple of years of life,
Sure.
during that attachment. We've talked about attachment trauma before
Mhm.
on this podcast. So your nervous system is very plastic at that time. It's still developing. And so part of it too is if you're not getting those cues for development, it might be that you don't have as much development of the of the mirror neurons as another child. It's possible. I think we all are born with some level of empathy, but I think that depending on your environment, you can upregulate it or downregulate it. And I think because we are so plastic and we've got like stem cells that we can use to develop different structures in our body at any given time. I think you can develop a stronger ability to have empathy. Like it's not as something that, oh, you're born with, and then I was just born that way, and that's
Yeah.
just who I am. I can't change. We're showing that it's somewhat plastic, right? And then the more you
Well,
practice it, the more you can develop.
yeah. Well, I think that this is a little bit like exercise. Your
Yes.
muscles atrophy if they don't get exercised, and I think we agree that the immune system is a little bit like that too. If there aren't some, that's why I drink out of the cow tank, right? Is these little hits on the immune system actually exercise it and make it more functional, a la the hygiene hypothesis, and so it would stand to reason, the more we know about how um, relationally and kind of trade oriented things are, it stands to reason that the trade off of a difficult growing up period, the trade off is you become a very empathetic adult. And if you've had an extremely stable, secure, never had a single fear in your life growing up, then you grow into um, a much less empathetic boy. Now that really has amazing, can I say, political ramifications. If you grow up in this nest where you never have to fear a thing, everything's taken care of, then you could kind of grow up feeling a little bit, elitist and well, just, empathy for down and out would be very difficult.
Yeah. And we should be careful to say nothing's cut and dry, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
these are all theories.
absolutely.
But yeah, but in speaking in generalities, of course, there's very rich, wealthy trust fund babies that have a great deal of empathy. And then there's people who are raised in horrible environments and they have no empathy. Like, so
Well,
there's a whole
a lot of
spectrum.
a lot of trust fund babies are raised financially secure, but not, but there's
Emotionally insecure.
yeah, there's hypocrisy in the home, corruption, whatever, running around, all sorts of, insecurity and fearful things going on in the home, even though it's in a palace.
Exactly. And, this also fits perfectly with that whole concept we were talking about with the self criticism, that self talk, the negative talk, because um, that is all centered around perception, right? And so your perception changes the words that you use, it changes your beliefs, which changes the words that you speak, uh, which determine whether or not you're going to speak positively or negatively about yourself. So, one example related to this is my husband has said to me for many, many years, rightfully so, he would say things like, wow, your childhood was awful. Like your childhood sucked. Like, like when we were talking about it. And for many years there, I was like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it did, And then in the past few years, I've actually one time when he said that to me, I said to him, I appreciate you like acknowledging, how bad my childhood was. But if you keep saying that to me over and over, it will always be my story, right? That will
Mm,
always be my perception. So could we not say that anymore? And so I actually don't look back at my childhood and think, oh my gosh, my childhood sucked. While I certainly could, I don't do that anymore. Now I look back at my childhood and I say, my childhood made me resilient and
mm.
empathetic, right? All these positives came out of my childhood. And so now it doesn't hold me captive anymore. It no longer holds me in that space of identity of a victim that, oh, it was so bad. And I keep coming around to it. It was so bad, it will hold you in a victim space. So that's part of the flipping. And,
Mhm.
and so if you can flip it to a positive, then you stop being critical because even though it doesn't sound like a self-criticism when you're saying, oh, I had a really bad childhood and this happened to me and this happened to me, but it's sitting in the same negative space as though I was criticizing myself. It's saying all these bad things happened to me. And so I'm going to trudge those up into the present moment and have that moment, basically forecast my future.
That moves the whole discussion because, Sina, how many adults say I had a perfect childhood? Not very many.
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe there's a number on it somewhere, but it has to be less than 10%. I mean, I grew up in a really good, but man, I had some. Every families have stuff.
Yeah.
Just,
They
it
go
just
through
is.
challenges.
Yeah, yeah, sure you do, and you have a bad day, and you aren't your best one day. And a friend of mine said, and I've never forgotten this, and I love this, almost like a 1-2 punch. The first he said to me, and now when I tie that to what you just said, it's really powerful. He said, "I've decided that you become an adult when you can wake up one morning and say, Mom and Dad, for all their faults, did the best they knew how."
Yeah.
Did the best they knew how with what they could, with where they were, with their limitations and perceptions and things. They did the best they could. So that's forgiveness. That's forgiveness for that. But now you're taking this one step further, and if you can say not only I forgive them, they did the best they could with what they had, with where they were in their context, and say every negative experience made me a more empathetic, resilient person.
Yeah.
Then you couple forgiveness with affirmation. Friends, want to dive deeper into our thought-provoking conversations? Become part of the Beyond Labels family today by joining below. For any gift amount, you'll get access to the full, uncut episodes.
Every contribution, whether big or small, keeps this podcast going.
So join us and expand your Beyond Labels experience. Thank you.